Pittsburgh Steeler fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. It's the Steelers preview, but it's also Ravens week, or as I like to call it, Ravens hate week, because I hate the Ravens. All Steeler fans hate the Ravens, and these three guys that live in the state of Maryland really hate the Ravens. So bringing on my fellow Marylanders, Dave Schofield, co-editor. What's up, Dave? How are you tonight?
I'm doing okay. I'm still trying to get used to it this week. I can't call my daughter by name this week. It's just a rule that I have. I just have to call her child or daughter or something like that.
Eldest child.
Yes. Well, because her name is synonymous with the color purple. So it starts with a V and ends with an eyelet. And so I can't call her by name during this week. That's just the way it works.
Brian Anthony Davis, go ahead. What's up?
Thank heavens. I thought he named her Ratbird Schofield. I thought that'd be horrible. I mean, that's not a loving name, but no, I get it. You know, as far as everything goes, I love the fact that it's Ravens week. I get that in the back of my neck, the hair stands up. I get all ready for this. I just get really pumped up. I want to fight people this week. I mean, the person in Arby's, they didn't put my curly fries in there. I went nuts. They were wearing purple. Let's just say restraining order. Can't go to the drive-thru anymore. No, no big beef and cheddar for me.
Oh my gosh.
That's your new nickname, Big Beef and Cheddar.
All right, but let's get right into things here. The Pittsburgh Steelers travel to play the Baltimore, Maryland. In Baltimore, Maryland, they play the Ratbirds, the Ravens, at M&T Bank Stadium. Now, you all have been there. I have not. I refuse to go there. I've had opportunities to go there. I've had opportunities to go there when the Ravens were awful and the Steelers were good. I've had opportunities when the script was switched. I will turn them all down until the day I die, because there's no chance, and you know where, that I'm walking into that stadium, because I'm not going to be able to contain myself, and you know that I'm not going to be able to bite my tongue. Brian, share us with you your experience of going to M&T Bank Stadium. When was it? How was it? And would you ever go back?
I'm not going to say never, but I thought it was a very bad experience. The Steelers were a playoff team that year. I believe we're talking about 2015 maybe. The Ravens were having a very bad year. It was week 15. It was right after Christmas. You know, I just absolutely hated it, because I was wearing a Steelers jersey, they were just yelling my way. But when I stood up and looked, and I had a very big guy next to me, he stood up and just looked around. They stopped. But on the way out of the stadium, there was a family wearing a whole bunch of Steelers attire and younger children. And these Ravens fans were just heckling them like crazy, which was just not appropriate. And I remember saying something there, and thankfully, because I joke about assaulting Arby's personnel, but I'm not a fighter. I'm that's just for fun. But I really hated it. Here's the thing. They hate us so much more than we hate them. And we talk about hating the Ravens. No, they are jealous and have a lot of hatred towards the Steelers. And so that's the thing. So I really didn't enjoy it. And I used to like that White Stripes song. I think it's a really cool song, Seven Nation Army. Mm-hmm. But is it Seven Nation Army?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
but
so.
Every time they score or John Harbaugh farts, they play that damn song. and it's just like, and they're chanting it. And I'm like, oh, this is horrible. So, I'm not a big fan. But before I let you go on to Dave, I'm going to tell you a really funny story. Elementary school bus, my newfound friendship with one Jefferson Hartman. We're driving through. We're going to the aquarium. Our kids are in first grade at the time?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And we're going past the stadium, and Jeff's like, can't do it now, but cover me. I got to give him the finger. Every time I go past that stadium, I give it the finger. I'm like, me too. Me too. I give a building the finger, and Jeff does too. I thought he was perfect. I love it.
Wang farts. That's funny. We used to have to go take my son to doctor's appointments down in Baltimore, and we used to have to go into downtown, and we'd have to go right by M&T Bank Stadium and Camden Yards, and I would say, "Hey kids, look over there on the left," and then flip off on the right. My wife would get mad. Anyways, Dave, you've been to M&T, right? I think I heard you say that.
I've been there twice. The first time I was there was actually my first ever NFL game. Not seeing a training camp workout or anything like that. When I used to go watch the Steelers and Redskins, that's who they were at the time, play at their training camp. I was there because my wife got really cheap tickets from work. And I actually watched my first NFL game I ever went to was in Baltimore, where it was the Ratbirds hosting the New Orleans Saints. And I was there dressed in green because that was the school colors of where I was coaching football. So I decided to just go neutral. And people were trying to slap my hands like, no. But I watched Deuce McAllister score 3 rushing touchdowns on the Ravens and defeat them 37-25 back in 2002. My other experience was when the only reason I decided to go was because I had a friend of mine, Ravens fan, had never been to an NFL game, said he really wanted to go sometime, in Pittsburgh. And I'm like, man, I don't want to waste a ticket going to Pittsburgh for taking a Ravens fan. I'm not doing that. So it was the year the Ravens were terrible. And Steeler fans wouldn't do this, but what do Ravens fans do? They sell their tickets for next to nothing. Yeah. I got the best seats for nothing. Basically, I mean, for less than half of cost. So I went to that game with a Ravens fan. So it was one of those things where he was like, I'm not letting anyone mess with you. But it was so funny because I guess they appreciated the guy next to me that was a season ticket holder appreciated the knowledge. And he actually said to me after the game, he's like, if all Steeler fans were like you, I think I could get along with them. He says, I've never met a Steeler fan like you. I'm like, I just like football. Yeah. But I couldn't say too much because that was the game. It was freaking Ryan Mallett. They lost to Ryan Mallett, so I hate that place. I'm not going there.
You all were at the same game.
We were at the same game. 2 days
I didn't realize it was the same game. It was on
Ryan Mallett.
Yeah. Yes.
So
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about it. I remember that game. That was around the holidays because I was back in Wheeling.
Yeah,
and So, okay. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, the X's and O's of this thing, the brass tacks, when you think about Steelers Ravens at M&T Bank Stadium, take away the time that you went in person. What is your favorite moment of a Steelers game at M&T Bank Stadium? Brian, we'll start with you.
Santonio Holmes win the division. He just squeaked that ball over. It was the first immaculate extension, actually. Wasn't on Christmas Day, but he just got over in 2008. That was a big, big moment. They win the division. The Ratbirds were really good that year. They ended up in the AFC Championship game against Pittsburgh, but that was a special moment for me.
They still argue that football didn't get over the goal line, even though it clearly did. It was pretty obvious.
Did you say 2008?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was because that was the year that the Steelers beat them 3 times, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
What about you? What about you, Dave?
Oh, my thing is I watch so many of the games on TV other than that one that sometimes I can't remember which ones were in Baltimore and which ones weren't. That was the biggest, probably the bigger issue with me. So if I'm thinking,
you want me to go while you think about it?
Yeah, go. Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. Mine would have to be Bryan helped me out with the year. I can tell you the game, what they were wearing. Like the Ravens were wearing their purple jerseys, black pants. Troy Polamalu comes off the edge. You're thinking the Steelers are not going to score a touchdown in this game. Like they're not even going to get across the goal line. Tomahawk chop Joe Flacco's arm. Fumble is loose. Lamar Woodley, his fat butt picks it up, and he stumbles into the end zone for the touchdown. They end up winning that game. That was incredible. What year was that, Bryan?
2010.
That was a fun year. That was a game.
December.
Sunday Night Football. And I remember sitting there thinking, holy cow, the Steelers are not going to score anything. They're not going to score any points. They're literally going to get shut out. I think they kicked a couple field goals, but then Troy came off the edge. Pow! Tomahawk chop right on Flacco's arm. That was beautiful. David, you have one yet?
That was 13-10.
Yep.
Yeah, that was
the bloody nose game.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I couldn't think of which game it was. So
Was that the same game? Was that the same game? Correct me if I'm wrong. When Roethlisberger was, man, it was late in the game, fourth quarter, can't take a sack, and he's trying to get away from Suggs. Suggs is literally like on his back, and he gets out of the pocket
the
and
left-handed throw,
shovels it forward, left-handed pass.
I remember the play. I'm trying to remember if that was the same game.
I don't know if that's the same game or not. I don't know if it's the same game.
I'm not sure, but that's coming to a retro show near you. I'm sure. I will tell you that.
Well, it'll be Thanksgiving because that's the next time you all will be talking about the Ravens. But let's talk about this episode. And this episode is titled something that I heard Dave bring up. I'm not sure if it was a Scobro show or another podcast where he said the pressure this week is not on the undefeated 6-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. It is on the 5-1 Baltimore Ravens for a lot of reasons. The Ravens are coming off a bye. The Ravens are at home. I still think, now I'm going to be running the expert picks article for tomorrow on the website on Friday, behindthesteelcurtain.com. I haven't checked to see what the experts think yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if the majority of experts think the Ravens are going to win this game. Bryan, why is there no pressure on the Steelers? Why should the Steelers be like, hey, we're playing with house money?
Because they're 6-0, and if they lose this game, they are not 2 games behind and behind on the tiebreaker like the Ravens would be. And that's the bottom line to it. You know, they're still in a position. They're still, I don't want to say there's no pressure on the Steelers, but they have less pressure. The onus is completely on Baltimore on this one because they already have that loss to Kansas City. It's easy to say, whoa, they just lost to the Super Bowl champs, get off their back. No, you really can't do that because they got destroyed. That 34-20 score was a lot farther away from reality than you'd think. They got crushed in that game. They were never in it. Anything that they scored was garbage time. They were embarrassed, and that could happen again. The last team that we saw with a pretty good record that got embarrassed twice this year when they played good teams was the Cleveland Browns. I'm not saying that Baltimore is the Cleveland Browns. All I'm saying is that Baltimore, just like they say about the Steelers, hasn't played anybody that they have not beaten anybody of worth really at this point. So you look at Baltimore, they are injured and beaten up a little bit. This bye, they don't come off buys well. This is they're right for the picking.
They do come off by as well, but let's talk about that in a second. Okay. You know, I'm shocked that the live chat, we haven't had any Ravens fans in here yet because it seems like we always do. Yeah. There's always one jag off that comments on like every single video that we put out there and says, "Oh, Ravens flock, blah blah blah." I'm sure they'll chime in sooner or later. But you know what they always say? You hear them mouthing off on Twitter, and they always say the Steelers haven't played anybody. No, I don't think any Steeler fan's going to really say up until week 6 and 7 that they've played anybody. But let's play this game with the Ravens, shall we? Let's do the same thing to the Ravens like they want to do with the Steelers. Week 1, Ravens beat the Cleveland Browns 38-6, completely shellacked.
Almost the same score that the Steelers beat.
Exactly. Take it for what it is. Some might say, hey, I mean, Kevin Stefanski's first year, Baker Mayfield's fourth offensive playbook in his career. It's first. There's a lot of first there. Okay, next at Houston. Okay, Bill O'Brien was still trying to tear the thing down from the inside out. Kansas City blows their doors off. Like Bryan said, that 34-20 score was not indicative of how bad that game was, okay? At Washington, they win 31-17. I watched that game. It was not as – that looks like a score where they blew them out. It was closer than you think. Mm-hmm. Cincinnati, it's Joe Burrow. It's a rookie quarterback. Good defense is going to do that. They win 27-3. And then at Philly, 2-point conversion away from losing that game. I'm looking at these teams. Cleveland, okay, 5-2. Houston, what? 2 wins. Kansas City, good team. Washington, I think 2 wins. Cincinnati, 1 win. Philadelphia, 2 wins. These are not good teams. So if Raven fans want to come at Steeler fans and say, who have you all played and who all that stuff? Well, guess what? The Steelers have played just as many good teams. Cleveland and Tennessee. They played Cleveland and Kansas City, and they've won them all. So here we are. The pressure, I think, is squarely on the Ravens because, like Bryan said, if they lose this game, they are in some serious trouble in the division. Plain and simple. Dave, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, I better get this. I'll get my thoughts in before the super chat. My thoughts are, I kind of brought up a lot of this on the Stat Geek. If you didn't listen to that
Good
Thursday
show.
morning
Give it a listen.
in the audio form. The Steelers and Ravens have played very similar teams. And the difference is they're other than the Browns, the only other team that they've each played that's over 500 is a team from the AFC Championship game from last year. Now, it just so happened that the Ravens got the one that won that game and won the Super Bowl, but they got them at home. The Steelers had to travel to Tennessee. The Steelers won that game on the road. Baltimore got beat pretty good at home. And if you look at it like, oh, well, they had to go up against Kansas City's offense. Technically, even after playing the Steelers, Tennessee has more yards per game, so they're a higher ranked offense than Kansas City. So you can't really make that argument at all. You are exactly right, Jeff. They have very similar resumes coming into it, and the Steelers are one game to the better right now.
And let's not forget that coming into this season, in terms of 2019 win percentage, in terms of easiest schedules in the NFL, Pittsburgh was second to last in terms of easiest, and Baltimore was the easiest. So we knew this going into it. Go ahead, though, Dave, and let's get this live chat taken care of. Felicia, $5. She said, I miss Lance and his love-hate predictions, so we can know whether we're going to win or not. I'll drop $10 if Dave gives me a Lance, hey, Felicia. So, Dave, come on.
I don't remember how he did it, but I got to try. Hey, Felicia.
That's about as good as you're going to get.
It was pretty good. And Felicia, if it makes you feel better, Lance gives us his predictions on by text every week. So we get our Lance predictions.
He changed the 1 week. He came out and said the Steelers are going to lose to the Browns. And then it turns around 2 days later after I said it on the Scobro show. I was like, no, the Steelers are going to win. I'm like, well, if you pick them each, one day and one the other, then either way you can say you were right. But yeah, he still gives us his predictions. I don't know if we should share it though.
Go ahead, Bryan. What you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment about the schedules. The only difference in schedules is the fact that they've got the Patriots and they've got the Chiefs because of that first place schedule that they're playing. The Steelers have the Broncos and they have they have the Broncos and they have the Bills.
Yeah.
And the Bills they have in Buffalo on Sunday night in December with that raucous mafia idiotic lunatic crowd.
They're not going to have any fans up there.
That's true. That's a good point. Those people, they're not in the right state to have fans.
I was going to say they're not any fans up there.
those people are insane. I will tell you that.
Oh, they are insane. They are insane. But it's a little different. You're right though. Now, what about this game? Because there's certain teams that when I'm looking at this game on paper and I'm looking up some numbers for podcasts and things like that, that I'm like, you know what? I love how the Steelers match up. Like I love it because you can just see it, you can picture it. There it is. There it is. Felicia gives us the $10. She's a woman of her word. Thank you, Felicia. She said, cool, tell Lance. I said, hey, that's great. First Last gave us $5. Said Ravens are under pressure to win because they play the Titans on November 22nd. And 4 days later, they play Pittsburgh. Ooh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah,
No.
I talked about that. That's an interesting thing.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to play the Titans and then roll into Pittsburgh on a short week. That's
almost like playing the Titans on the road and then going to Baltimore on the road. So when I'm thinking about this game and I looked at these numbers, there's certain things that make me uneasy. And that's always the case when they play the Ravens. I'm never comfortable when they play Baltimore. I don't care if it's in Heinz Field. I don't care if it's M&T Bank. I'm never comfortable when they play the Ravens because I know no matter what, we can count on one hand in our lifetimes the amount of times that this game was in hand either way, where you're like, oh, this game's over. I mean, you think about that. I think it was week 2 that one year when Roethlisberger almost got killed by Bart Scott. They just blew him out. Pittsburgh didn't have a prayer in that game. And then you think about the 35 points in the first half on Monday Night Football. That game was over at that moment as well. Those are rare. These games are close. They're hard fought. It's going to come down to the end. If it doesn't, you're shocked. But guys, what, if anything, gives you pause about this upcoming game, whether it's offense, defense, doesn't matter. Bryan, we'll start with you.
Lamar Jackson does not throw well off of the blitz, but the problem with the blitz, he can take off and kill you with those legs. And I just don't know without without Mr. Bush, if they can go ahead and stop him off of that when he's running freelancing, trying to run away from that blitz, I think that might be dangerous. I'm afraid he's going to break one. That's what gives me pause. And also the tight end situation for them as well.
Who's other than Andrews? Who do they have? Because they got rid of Hayden Hurst. Who's their other tight end? Do we know?
I think Nick Boyle's still there, right, Dave?
Really? Nick Boyle's there?
I can't remember. They talked about it on Know Your Enemy. They mentioned the name, and I couldn't remember what it was.
I might be wrong.
They got rid of Hayden Hurst, traded him to Atlanta. He's with the Falcons now. But go ahead. Anyways, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's what really worries me the most. Mark Andrews, and yes, Nick Boyle is still there.
Okay, very good. We'll talk about Maxwell's $5 here in a second. But Dave, go ahead. What gives you pause coming into this game, if anything at all?
This is the best Steelers run defense they've had in a long time with that front five.
Yeah.
So, I mean, better than last year. I mean, last year they struggled some against the run. This year, it's not just that. They've been dominating the line of scrimmage. They've been getting push on the line. They haven't been getting pushed. So, if you're going to come in with that big run game, especially with the running back that does the best with Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram not practicing for 2 days so far this week, so he is very much up in the air if he will play. If you didn't listen to Jeff's Let's Ride on Wednesday, you've got to go back and listen to that, because Jeff has me convinced that Lamar Jackson can't throw.
Well, Lamar Jackson.
I know it's not.
I'm not going to.
I know you. I'm not going that far.
I'm not going to give him the Baker Mayfield treatment. I'm not going to give him the Baker Mayfield sucks. We know this. Yeah. Not going to go that far.
Yes,
but Lamar Jackson can't throw the football, and not very well. He can. He was the MVP last year. He's a playmaker.
He's not this year. He's just
He's a playmaker. And I think that Mike Tomlin put it best on Tuesday during his press conference. He said you have to defend him in three ways: as a passer, as a runner, and as a play extender, kind of like what Bryan mentioned, where if you don't get home and you give him a crease, he's going to be gone. And so the one thing that I was so dumbfounded with, and we'll get to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I get excited. Okay. For me, this game, what gives me pause is the Baltimore Ravens pass rush, because I think that the Steelers defense, like Dave said, matches up extremely well with the Ravens for once. And yeah, I think it's safe to say that this defense was put together to stop the Baltimore Ravens and by proxy, the Cleveland Browns, because they both want to run the ball. That's how they want to set up their game plan. You need to stop the run. And so for me, I'm worried about the fact that this Baltimore pass rush, believe it, they've done a great job. They have 22 sacks on the season. Well, Pittsburgh leads the NFL with 26, I believe is what I have here.
That's correct.
And I mean, I know the Steelers have only given up 8. Okay, they've only given up 8, but they haven't really faced a pass rush like this. And so that gives me pause, because if Roethlisberger's under duress, that's an issue. So they're going to have the Steelers, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, the Steelers are going to have to run the football too. They're going to have to establish the run, and that's not going to be easy. The Ravens defense is giving up 109 per game, which is 11th. The Steelers, oddly enough, are 11th in rushing yards per game. I know those are not averaged out like Dave and his stat geek.
Don't worry. I got him here if you really want to know.
It's okay. We get the gist of it. We get the gist of it.
When half the league's played one number of games, the other half played a different number.
Okay, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead. Geek it out.
What would you mean with the rushing offense?
Yeah. The rush defense of the Ravens and the Steelers.
Well, you're
rushing.
right. The Steelers are the 11th best rushing offense with 129.6 yards a game, and Baltimore's D is 10th at 109.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we'll talk about that. I want to get to Maxwell Holcomb's $5 tip here. Super chat. We appreciate that. He said, who do you guys think has the advantage if it rains on Sunday? Here I am living in Maryland. I have no idea what the weather's calling for this weekend. I think it's just get cooler.
It's supposed to rain later in the day as of right now. So that's
who has the advantage, Bryan, if it does, if Mother Nature wants to drop some dampness on the game.
Well, I was thinking that the Titans were going to have the advantage in the rain when it was raining on Sunday. I was really worried about that. And you did see some interceptions from Ben Roethlisberger. The Steelers are going to rely on throwing the ball probably a whole lot more. than the Baltimore Ravens. I think a running team does well in the rain. We saw what Robert Sniffin the Turd did against them last year on the last game of the season in the rain, in the cold, played pretty well against them. So, all I'm thinking is that the rain might not be in the Steelers' best interest, but they're gamers. This is a big game. So, they're ready for everything. They're like the U.S. Postal Service. Rain, sleet, snow. Don't worry about the Steelers, but they do have the disadvantage.
Dave, what do you think?
It rained last Sunday in Nashville?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
No, it didn't rain in Nashville.
There was rain in Nashville?
It did not. It was supposed to be really hot, and it ended up being much cooler, but it didn't rain.
There was rain?
So, man, no.
Someone called Joe DiNardo. What the heck's going on?
Brian,
Tell us,
it's
Joe.
raining in Nashville, and the Ravens can't win out of the bye.
Well, they were calling for rain, and I know I saw some
And
rain.
he thinks Seattle has 2 losses.
No, this is not me not paying attention. Gosh, I've already screwed up the bye thing this week.
Baker Mayfield
Another
sucks.
rain.
Baker Mayfield sucks. Just say Baker
What
Mayfield
did-
sucks.
what- yeah.
We'll move on.
No, he does. And if you listen to the rooting guide, there's a whole song dedicated to Baker Mayfield.
Woo, I'll have to check that
Give
out.
that a teaser.
There you go. Very good.
Nathaniel says bad is right. I know there was rain.
Nathaniel's not Joe DiNardo. I don't trust him. Okay. And Joe DiNardo, I'm not digging up his bones to ask him what he thinks. Dave, if it is raining at M&T Bank Stadium this Sunday, and it actually does rain, not in Brian's mind, does it benefit one or the other?
Brian, one thing that Brian said there that I felt was very true, might have been the only thing he said true all night, and that is last season in week 17, and it was pouring. That's just all I have in my brain. Now, of course, this is a much different Steelers team, especially on defense, and all around, they're just a different team. So, but I just gut feeling, I would say if it was raining, I would give a little bit of advantage to the home team.
I can't remember the last time it rained to the point where it affected the game. Like you're not able to throw. I mean, yeah, you think about the deluge they had in Monday Night Football against Miami, where the final score was 3-0. Yeah,
Yes.
that was different. You think about the Miami game that Bryan just recently did on the retro show, Ben's first start as a quarterback. That was in a hurricane. Like that changes things. I don't think they're calling for that. Kyle Smith puts $5 in the tip jar. Says legend has it Bob Griffin III is still dancing on the field M&T Bank Stadium from last year's Week 17 game. I do remember that, and I guarantee you the players remember that. If fans remember it, the players do too. CT Pittman says, honestly, I'm not worried about the Ravens run game. We held Derrick Henry in check, and he's better than all 3 backs on the Ravens. I would agree with that.
I would agree with that as well. The biggest thing that I'm worried about with their run game is Lamar Jackson and not their running backs.
Well, let's
Because
look at this.
that's what's different.
Let's talk about Lamar a little bit, and that's actually how they say it in Baltimore. Let's talk about Lamar Jackson. Okay, so everyone, I was looking up these statistics, and I had talked about this on my Let's Ride on Wednesday. If you wanted more in-depth on that, you got to listen to it, okay? I even sent it to my friend that's a Ravens season ticket holder, and he said, I can't believe I'm saying this. It was a pretty good show. So, yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
All right. It was pretty unbiased. It was. I wasn't bashing him. I mean, I am now. So this is an offensive NFL. All right. This is like the NFL to the max in terms of scoring and passing. It is an offensive league more this year than I think ever has. For crying out loud. Remember the watermark that Todd Haley said where he was like, we want to average 30 points a game. And fans were like, that's hysterical. It's never going to happen because that was such a lofty goal. Now it's like, oh, you're just averaging 30 points a game. That's it. So listen to this. In the 6 games that the Baltimore Ravens have played, do you realize that Lamar Jackson has only thrown over 200 yards 2 times?
Only because you
twice.
told me.
And it was in weeks 1 and 2. It was in weeks 1 and 2.
Yeah.
In the last 4 weeks.
There's one in there that's under 100, isn't he?
Yes, against Kansas City, he threw for 97. Against Washington, he threw for 193. Against Cincinnati, that they blew him out, 180. And then in Philly, he threw for 186. I mean, tell me this guy. I mean, I know he is a game breaker, meaning he can beat you with his legs, but he is not throwing the ball well. The guy that I sent my good friend who's a season ticket holder, he swears up and down that there's something wrong with Lamar Jackson. He said he's not accurate. He's not confident. He thinks it's a knee because he missed some practice time earlier in the season with a knee. I don't know. But Lamar Jackson, and listen to the rushing numbers too. Okay, he rushed for 45 in week 1, 54 in week 2, 83 against Kansas City. 53 against Washington, only 3 against Cincinnati. He didn't have to. And then Philadelphia, 108. So, I mean, he's still running the football. I mean, I'm not saying that, but at the same time, when I looked at these Lamar Jackson numbers, I was underwhelmed. We'll put it that way. I was underwhelmed. We have some super chats to get to. Sean Manahan puts $2 in the tip jar, says Steelers 30, Ravens 17. I'm sorry, Ratbirds 17. Get that correct. We'll give our predictions here later in the show. And Isaac Aguilera, longtime viewer and listener of the program, says, gives us $5. Thank you, Isaac. If Vinny lays the boom on Lamar the way he did to Tannehill, Lamar won't want to run the ball himself again.
Oh my goodness! He hit him so hard.
That was a great hit, clean hit. If the Steelers are going to deploy the same defensive approach that they did in Week 17, and this is a question for you guys, and that was, if you're going to run your RPOs, because rule states once you put the ball out for a running play and you keep it and you run, you are a runner. And so that's why they hit Robert Griffin III every single time he even handed the ball off, like just punished him. That was their goal. It reminds me of the movie Remember the Titans, where he says, we want them to remember when they played the Titans. It's like the Steelers and Keith Butler said, we want Lamar Jackson, or in this case, RG3, to remember the time that they played the Steelers, because they're going to hit them every single time. Guys, do they do that again, or do they change it up? Bryan, we'll start with you.
They could change it up, but this is a different quarterback that they're facing. They're facing Lamar Jackson instead. So I'm looking more at the game plan from Week 5 in 2019. That's the game plan that I'm hoping they follow, because, even though Lamar Jackson had some plays, especially towards the beginning and closer to halftime, he had a good go against them. He was not they shut him down more than any other team did to that point until he got to the playoffs. But they did pretty well against Lamar Jackson last year. So they have the defense that can handle him. But I don't think it's going to be the same game plan for Bobby Griffin III, because it's just two different guys.
Well, you speak of Week 5. Here is his stat line in Week 5 last year. It's the only game that Lamar Jackson has started against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He played sparingly in 2018 when he would sub in for Wacko Flacco, and then he started in Week 5, and then they sat him in Week 17. So when it comes to experience against Keith Butler in that defense, he does not have a lot of it. 19 of 28, only threw for 161 yards, a 5.8 average, threw for 1 touchdown, 3 picks, 5 sacks. They sacked him 5 times in that game for a 54.9 rating. He had 14 runs for 70 yards, a 5-yard average, and 4 of those went for a first down. So that was probably maybe one of the best defensive performances against Lamar Jackson in his career so far. Dave, what are your thoughts on that game plan defensively?
The whole thing of hitting the quarterback every time is great, but you can take it too far, and I think the Steelers did last year in Week 17.
I agree with that.
Not that they shouldn't be hitting him. Not what I mean take it too far is that there were times they were more worried about hitting the quarterback every time than they were actually stopping the ball carrier. There was times where they had the option to tackle the ball carrier, and they opted to hit the quarterback. It almost felt like someone else was going to make that play, and then that someone else wasn't there to make that play. I still want them to hit the quarterback, but you don't have to do it. Don't do it at the price of saying, "Oh, well, maybe they'll get some runs on us because we're too busy hitting the quarterback." No. Stop the run. Hit the quarterback when you can.
Absolutely. So, hey, go ahead, Bryan. You have something to say?
That game plan, I agree with you completely, Dave, but that game plan was based on the fact that you had Duck Hodges on the other side of the ball.
That's true.
And they were really down on him at that point because they had replaced him with Mason Rudolph the week before, and then he gets hurt. You just had a situation where they needed the defense to score points for them. And that's why they were sending everybody they could.
Yep.
Listen, we're just getting warmed up. It's Ravens week. We're just getting warmed up. So if you're listening in audio, make sure you go over to part 2, because we're going to be talking about X factors, bold predictions, giving our predictions. We have a couple of super chats to get to as well. We're going to talk about the injury report. All that's in part 2. If you're watching live on YouTube, don't go anywhere, because we're not going anywhere, but we'll be right back after this break. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, Jeff Hartman here, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com for part 2 of the Steelers preview podcast. It's Ravens Hate Week, as we like to call it, or maybe it's just me. I don't know. I'm here with Brian Anthony Davis, the podcast producer, and Dave Schofield, the other co-editor. Let's get right into things. Flash23 gave us $5 in the tip jar. He said, guys, why did the Steelers get away from play action and the run in the second half of the game last Sunday, knowing they had to eat up clock with the lead? Let's talk quickly about last week in the second half, mainly where they only put up 3 points. Why do you think they got away from a play action approach or a passing approach? Dave, you said you want to go first here?
Oh, I have the answer to this.
Go ahead.
It was sent to me by one Jeffrey Benedict.
Okay, go for it.
This was an interesting stat that he said, here are the runs. He did this. He didn't break it up by half, but he did it by which number they ran. And it's not that the Steelers gave up on the run. It's they weren't doing it nearly as effective, because in Connor's first 10 runs, he had 58 yards. That's, 5.8 a carry. That includes that -10 nonsense throw from Ben that counted as a rush. He had 6.
Gosh, that play. You always bring that up.
I know. I just had to put it out there. Well, Jeffrey had that written there too.
The Wildcat.
He knows how I feel about
Wildcat, Buffalo.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
All right.
You weren't sitting next to him, Jeff.
All right. So here we go. In those first 10 runs, 6 of them went for 5 yards or more. So 60% of his runs, even more than that if you take away that. Never mind. Okay. But then in rushes 11 through 15, he had 13 yards with only 2 of them going for more than 5. And then in rushes 16 to 20, he went 11 yards with only 1 of them going over to 5. They just weren't running the ball as effectively in the second half. And it's great to say, well, you want to keep running and keep the clock going. But we don't want the RRPP all second half. You don't want to run for 1 yard, run for no gain. Oh, now we got to pass on 3rd and 9, and they're going to send everybody, and you have to throw it quick. So you're throwing a 3-yard pass, and he's only getting 6 yards, and then you got to punt the ball away. So you've got to do what you got to do to you want to control the clock. You got to move the chains. And if you can't move the chains running the ball anymore, then you got to do whatever you got to do to move the chains.
Let's also not forget that for whatever reason, Ben Roethlisberger does not like to play action pass that much anymore. No. Some say that he doesn't like to turn his back to the play. I don't know. He did it. He's done it a couple times this year, but not as much as early in his career. But especially when they're running the ball well, I think Flash, who gave us the donation there, he brings up a good point. If they're expecting the run, they're going to come in on the run they're going to bite on that play action pass. Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
They could bite on that. I know that Ben Roethlisberger doesn't want to turn his back. I have heard that as well. I'd kind of like to see the play action a whole little bit more, but he's still making it work. So, I really don't think that's too much of an option.
All right, we have a couple super chats to get to here. Aaron puts $5 in and says, who would you rather play as strictly a passer, RG3 or a Lamar Jackson? Brian, we'll start with you. Just a passer, not a runner.
I still want to play. RG3 because I really trust Lamar Jackson in some spots because he gets it to that tight end real well, and he always seems to find Marquise Hollywood Brown against the Steelers. I think he's more dangerous on the long ball than RG3 is.
Dave, thoughts?
I honestly, I would rather go up against RG3 as a passer because I think Lamar Jackson actually sees and dissects the field better. Not that he does it great, but I still think it's better than RG3. I think that was one of his, ultimately why he didn't last longer than what he did. That, and they tried to play him when he was really injured.
Yeah, we forgot that little caveat.
Yeah. Thanks, Washington.
Thanks, Shanahan.
Yeah.
I will say that I would say as a passer who I would want to go against. So they're not able to run the ball. I'll take Lamar Jackson. I've seen so many passes that you're like, wait, what? That's the MVP. That's most valuable player? Really? I have seen a lot of those living in Maryland when you watch the Ravens when the Steelers are maybe playing in a late game. CT Pittman, $4.99. We appreciate it. He says, if the Steelers win this game, everyone, in all caps, everyone, better give us our respect. So tired of people saying Steelers win, but it's like James Conner. Like I always said, he's the ultimate butt guy. No, I'm not talking about preference in other ways. I'm talking about, well, James Conner is great, but he always gets hurt. But he does that. But it's the Steelers are the same way. They're the most hated team in the NFL. Everyone hates Pittsburgh. Who cares? All right.
They only hate you because they want to be you.
That's right. That's right. All right, Dave, why don't you go through the injury report as of Thursday? Remember, this is for those listening in podcast platform, and this show doesn't get published till 12 o'clock noon on Friday. We record it Thursday night, so this is a Thursday injury report. Dave, go ahead.
All right. So there was a lot of players that came back today. A lot, which was to be expected. Of course, all the non-injury related stuff. The two biggest things of concern was Derek Watt went in the wrong direction. He went from a full to a limited. But I don't know. That might have just been, hey, you had a big day yesterday. Let's ease you off a little bit today, and we'll get you back full tomorrow. We don't know what they're thinking. Mike Hilton came back limited after not playing yesterday, so that could be a good progression. Both of those guys has everything to do with tomorrow. The players that did not play was Jordan Dangerfield with the quadricep. Got that feeling that was going to be the case from Tomlin's press conference on Tuesday, along with Chris Wormley with a knee. The one that is concerning, this is the one that, once again, we're not talking starters here, but the reason this is concerning is that Ulysses Gilbert III ends up on the injury report with a back issue. And the reason you don't want to hear that he went from not on the injury report to a not practicing today because of a back issue is because what was that, week 6 or 7 last year? I can't remember.
It was about that.
That he ended up on injured reserve for the season with a back injury. So you have to ask yourself, does that have to do with the same injury he had last year? And has this been a little bit of a nagging issue as to maybe why we haven't seen him as much in 2020? Who knows?
Do you want to go into Baltimore?
Oh, we can go to Baltimore.
Yeah, do the Baltimore Ravens.
I didn't know if you wanted to stop.
No. We'll go over both.
Go. Okay, well, so this is just today's. Once again, no Mark Ingram for the second day in a row with an ankle. Jimmy Smith, cornerback, went from limited yesterday to not playing today with an Achilles.
Wow.
Now, he's their slot guy right now.
Yes.
Yeah,
because he's a big slot guy.
He's their Mike Hilton, basically.
He's 6'2".
Then the only other person who didn't practice was nose tackle Brandon Williams, but it was not injury related. Right. And then limited with an abdomen was linebacker, defensive back Anthony Levine. So that is everyone else, like Marlon Humphrey, was back to full after an illness. And that's pretty much.
There's two names on that list, and that is Jimmy Smith and Ingram.
Yes.
And those are big names. If they're both out for this week, that's going to have some major repercussions on how this game is going to play out. It's not that J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards? Is that his name?
Yes.
The other running back. It's not that they can't handle the load, but there's a difference when Mark Ingram's in there. He's like the hammer on that offense when they're running the football well. He's a downhill guy, tough to bring down. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. I mean, Gus Edwards had a good game against Pittsburgh last year in Week 17, but man, I just think that I like the Steelers' run defense even more if Ingram is not in the lineup. And I know that Lamar is athletic, and I know they can still run the football. But Bryan, when you see this injury report, regardless of which side, what are your thoughts?
I think it's disconcerting on both sides, and I actually will disagree with you guys on the Anthony Levine thing. He's picked off Ben twice, I believe.
I couldn't remember who he was.
Yeah, he was back in that when they were plummeting back in 2018. He had a really big game against them. I think he had 2 turnovers on that Sunday night game. And he's really tough on that defense as well. He's kind of a hybrid linebacker and a defensive back as well. But Jimmy Smith, that's a huge deal if you're a Steelers fan, because like I mentioned before, the fact that he's 6'2", you guys mentioned he plays on the slot. That's a pretty big guy playing there. That secondary is pretty tough because you've got Marlon Humphreys, you've got Marcus Peters, and Jimmy Smith. With Jimmy Smith being out, that kind of helps the Steelers situation as well. On the other side of the ball, when you're looking at UG3, like Dave mentioned, that is a big deal because you're dealing with depth issues at that inside linebacker position. So you're running out of guys. And if he is not going to be there, you're awfully thin there, man. Really thin.
Dave, thoughts on the injury report? I mean, you kind of gave your thoughts. Anything that you didn't mention?
You know me, you look at the trend and you have a pretty good idea. Last week, I basically called what it was going to be. I think when UG3 is the mystery.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do there.
So
but I'll bet you there's no Jordan Dangerfield and no Chris Wormley.
No, they're out. What about Hilton? What's your gut on Hilton?
My gut on Hilton is
he's only limited today.
It's going to be all about tomorrow. He could be the first The Steelers have only designated people as out.
Right. No question.
So far, no questionables yet. I would not be shocked if he's a questionable.
Okay.
But it just seems like the Steelers want to know who's going to be there and who's not.
You think
so they make the call.
With Watt being downgraded to full from limited, you think he's out this week?
No, I'm not sure about that one. Like I said, it could have just been like, hey, well, we don't want to work you 3 straight days really tough. So we're going to work you. Okay. We're going to work you hard Wednesday, work you hard Friday, and kind of let you take some stuff off on Thursday just to make sure you're okay. So like with him, it'll really be about tomorrow.
See, that's a big one for me because if you lose Dangerfield, who's your special teams captain, we know that Derek Watt is a really good special teams player. And so if you lose Dangerfield and you gain Watt, I feel like that kind of offsets each other. But at the same time, you lose them both. Now, all of a sudden, your special teams, and that's an area that against Pittsburgh, let's be honest, they've been burned on special teams a lot by the Ravens throughout the years. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. Anything to add, Bryan? You good?
No, I'm really good on that. I just feel that if Watt is out, that you're going to see some more packages with Henry Mondo in there.
Old Mondo. I'm not sure they should unless it's in the goal line, but we'll see.
But you may.
You may. You're right. You may. Let's get into X factors. Yeah, let's get into X factors. We're going to do an offensive X factor and a defensive X factor. If you've never listened to this podcast before or watched this podcast, basically we take a player that we think is going to be a very important piece of the puzzle for the Steelers in their position, at their role on that side of the field, whatever. Let's start on defense. Let's go with defense first. Bryan, who's your defensive X factor in this game in Week 8?
Old-fashioned Fedarius Terrell Edmonds. I think he is going to be a big deal this week. I think
you've been predicting a pick, and it hasn't happened yet.
I don't even know if it's. I'm almost done predicting the picks because he's really not the splash play guy anymore. Yeah. But you're not going to get picks from him, but you're getting a whole lot more. So it's time to get off of his back and realize that he's a big part of that defense. Hey. I think the fact you've got G3 possibly out, and the fact that he's going to have to move up in there a little bit. He's very good against the run. He had that key sack against Denver. I really think he's going to come and play big, have a lot of tackles, and he's going to be responsible over the middle too, because there's a guy that really worries me streaking down the field in the middle of that field, and it's Hollywood Brown.
Oh, I thought it was Frank the Tank who was going streaking.
Frank.
All right. Before we get to Dave's X Factor, defensive X Factor, Felicia puts $5 in the tip jar. Says the injury report is smoke and mirrors or eye candy. The Browns did that and everyone played. We need Ray to have a beast of a game on punt returns. Oh, Ray McLeod. There you go. Good one, Felicia. I like that. Dave, defensive X Factor for you.
Well, I was trying to think about it. I'm like, I think Bryan's going to take one of two guys, so I'll take the other. And he did. He took one of the two I was thinking of with Terrell Edmonds, which is if he can do what he's done so far and so well this year. I'm tired of people harping on Terrell Edmonds. Terrell Edmonds has been playing great this year. Watch the games. He's been taking out the tight ends from the other teams. If you get him taking out Mark Andrews, that's a great thing. So my X factor is going to be Vince Williams shutting down that run game.
For me, what I'm about to say is not cutting on this player at all. I do not want it to come off as such. But there's going to come a game where Mr. Cameron Hayward is going to have to do his best Wreck-It impersonation. And I really don't feel like we've seen it yet. I really don't. Do you guys agree? We haven't had that dominant Cam Hayward performance where he's living in the backfield, getting a couple sacks. We haven't seen it yet.
We haven't seen it when he's with Stephon Tuitt. That's what happened. It happened last year after Tua went out. What's the deal? Come on, Cam. Why don't you both do it?
This is the game, Cam.
Yeah.
This is the game. You stuff the middle, you shove the guard or whoever you're over top of on that particular play back into Lamar Jackson's lap. We know Watt and Dupree are going to be on the outside, and you suffocate him. That's how you handle Lamar Jackson. If you get the bookends that cone him in and the interior collapses, he can go nowhere. This is a game that Cam Hayward, I think, especially in run defense too. I don't want to negate that part of it, but I would love to see Cam have a Wreck-It game. We know when Wreck-It Ralph comes out, that is Cam Hayward, that it is an exciting thing. I am thinking Cam Hayward is the guy this week. He's due. I think he's due. Let's go to the offensive side of the ball. Bryan, offensive X Factor. What do you got?
I'm going to go with James Conner this week. I think
Jimmy C.
I think Jimmy C needs to go ahead and help Ben set up the pass a whole lot more this week. You're dealing with, like we talked about before, so a great secondary here too. This is a fantastic secondary. Jimmy C is going to need to throw these guys off.
Dave, offensive X factor. He got
Very simple. Ben Roethlisberger got to take care of the ball.
Yeah, you got to take care of the ball. Can't have a repeat of last week with 3 picks. I'm going to go with a Mr. What is it? Canadian Bacon Tron or something. Mr. Chase.
That was going to be my other one.
Chase Claypool.
Canadian Bacon Tron.
I don't like the Mapletron nickname. I don't like it at all. I think it's kind of corny.
So t-shirts.
I know. Canadian Bacon might be even better. We'll try that one. I'll send an email. Okay. So for me, I think this is a game, Chase Claypool, they might be sleeping on him. Juju Smith-Schuster told media earlier this week he thinks Marlon Humphrey is going to follow him. And if that's the case, that means that they're designating him as the number 1. And Deontay Johnson has to be the number 2, and so maybe Peters is on him. But if Marlon Humphrey's following Juju everywhere, you better put him in the slot. And if Humphreys follows him to the slot, Claypool better be out wide, whether it's your X or Z, doesn't matter, and he should be able to feast on his matchup. This is a game, I felt it before against Philly. I think this is a game where people might be sleeping on Claypool, thinking that one performance, and really the 2 performances, because he played well against Cleveland as well, and the week after, they might be thinking, it's kind of flash in the pan. I don't think so. I think this is a statement game for him. They're going to look to get the ball to Canadian Bacon-tron early and often. Book it. There you go. That's my X factor on offense, because if they can get him going, that offense is going to follow suit. Let's go with some over-under. Y'all ready?
Love over-under.
Over-under.
All right.
Here we go. All right. Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger touchdowns thrown 1.5. Over-under. Brian, go ahead.
Going over with 2.
Okay. David?
Ditto
You're going over?
with 2.
Okay. I'm going under with 1. I'm going under with 1. Baltimore Ravens total rushing yards. 135.
Ooh.
Brian, over under.
Over.
Ooh, Dave.
I had a number set in my mind, so it was going to be based on whatever you said, and my number was 125, so I will go under.
Okay.
That'll be the most they've given up this year.
The Ravens are averaging 164.
Hold them under their average.
And I'm going to say under. I think they're going to hold them under. James Conner rushing yards, 70. Brian, over under.
Over.
Dave.
Give me the push, and that means a Steelers victory because it's over 60.
That's fine. I'm going to say under. Okay, I'm going to say under. And this is why. Benny Snell Jr. yards, 50. This is a lofty one. People are probably like, what is Jeff thinking? 50 yards for Benny Snell? Jeff is saying
he ran good against them in week 17.
Yes, he did. Jeff is saying that Benny Snell might be a good option here. 50 yards over under, Brian. What do you think?
You know what? I'm going to take the under, but I'm really, really intrigued here.
My wife tells me that all the time. Dave, Dave, go ahead. Over under 50
she's
yards.
really intrigued about Brian? What? Sorry.
Thank you, Dave.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I will go under on that one as well. Like, I love what he did last year in week 17 against the Ravens. It even made Lance Williams a believer when he watched the tape again that said, he's not that bad. No, he's not if you look at that game. But I see them using him. I can see him getting a lot of those, third and short carries, stuff like that. But Jeff, he could take one of those sitting at the 40-yard line. They want to give it to him on 3rd and 1, and they hand it off to Benny Snell when he takes to the house. That might be it. So, but I'm still going to go under just based on the law of averages.
I'm going to go under as well. All right, under as well. Here's another one. Rushing touchdowns for the Steelers, 2. Over under, Brian.
Under. We'll get one.
Dave?
Push.
I'm going to go with a push as well. I think they're going to get 2. I think there's going to be the goal line touchdowns there. Steelers turnovers, 1.5. That's a stat I didn't look up with the Ravens, is how they are doing taking the ball away. Dave, do you have that?
I do.
Go ahead,
Ravens.
Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah.
What's your over under?
I'm going over. I think Ben throws 2 picks again this week.
Oh, 2. Okay. Dave, over under?
The Ravens have 11 takeaways on the season. That ranks, when you adjust it by the number of games played, that ranks 6th in the NFL. I'm going to say, you said number of
1.5.
I'll take the turnovers. I'm taking the under, because if it's not, then they're in trouble.
I'm going to take the under as well. They cannot duplicate what happened last week, even though some of those were rather fluky. I'm going to take the under. I think if they have any, it's just 1. Lewis Stamper puts $1.99. Says any chance a blowout win for the Steelers? Stay tuned. Picks are coming up. Put it that way. Takeaways. Steelers defensive takeaways. They did not have one in Tennessee last week. I was kind of surprised by that. But we'll say takeaways set at 1.5. Brian, over under.
Let's go over. I think 2.
All right, Dave.
I'm going to go over as well.
I'm going to go under with 1. I think they get 1, but I don't think there's going to be a sloppy game. Chase Claypool total yards. 75 over under. Brian, go ahead.
I think he's going to do some magic with his legs as well. So let's go ahead and say over.
Dave?
What was the number again?
75 total yards, not just receiving yards.
Push. I don't know.
All of it for a push. That's such a Dave move. All of that for a push. I'm going to say over. I think Chase Claypool was a good day. Lamar Jackson passing yards, 175. Brian, over or under?
I'm actually going to say over.
Okay, Dave?
I think it's going to be barely under.
I'm going to say over because I think they're going to have to throw it to get back. They're not going to be able to run it. He's going to have to throw it.
Gotcha.
Which next one, Lamar Jackson rushing yards, over under 60. Brian Davis.
You guys are going to hate me. Over.
Sheesh. Dave Schofield.
I'm actually going to say over as well. I think he's going to lead them in rushing, and they're going to have about 100 and what did I say, 125, something like that.
Yes, you did say 125. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to say, I'll say over because he gets those big chunk yards sometimes on third down. That's like 3rd and 13. He gets 20. Steelers sacks on Lamar Jackson or anyone that's carrying the ball back there. They do run wildcat pass, a la after the Steven Nelson interception against Buffalo last year. Anyways, sacks 3.5. Sacks 3.5 for the Steelers. Over under, Brian.
Sack party back in the house. Let's go 6.
Whoa, really? Man, that would get them right back on track to their pace. Dave, over under 3.5.
I'm going over. I'm going 5 every game. That's just what I'm doing.
I'm going to say under 3. And then Ben being sacked. The line set at 2.5. Over under, Brian.
Under 2.
Dave?
Same. Under 2.
Okay, I'm actually going to go with under as well. I think they get him a couple times, but not anything crazy. All right, now let's get to the line and the over-under on this game. Dave, give us that so we can give our picks. We'll do bold predictions, trivia, and we're out of here. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, so here we go. The line has moved slightly. It is what we last saw on Tally Site, which is -4 for the Ravens, so +4 for the Steelers, and the over-under is 46.5.
All right, Brian Davis, prediction time. Put your money where your mouth is. What's up?
Oh man, I have been struggling with this. I was working on Bold and Bizarre. I still don't have one yet, but I'm going to give you just coming from my gut, and not everything that comes from my gut's good. I'm just going to tell you that. But I'm going to go with a lower score. So I'm going to say it's going to be 26-24.
Okay.
In favor of the Ravens.
Oh, you turd. Okay. Dave, go ahead. What's your prediction?
I am struggling with this. I've talked about how much I've struggled with this, and the difference is with my head and my heart, and I want my gut to break the tie, because my heart says that I have it going to be a close game. My heart says Steelers. My head says Ravens, because on paper, I've said this before, on paper, right now, this is the hardest game the Steelers have left. This is it. And if they're not, and if they're going to lose a game, this is the most likely game out of all of them to go into Baltimore. So this is why we said it. The pressure's on the Ravens. But with that, what's tipped the scale? I want to answer one of the previous super chat questions about could we see a Steelers blowout? I could see if anyone's going to blow anyone out, I would see it more in favor of the Steelers than the Ravens, because I think the way the Ravens are built is not to come from behind, but the Steelers they could. So if you're going to have a blowout one way or the other, that's going to be one of those, the way I would go if there's going to be one. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I am going to go with a final score of 31-27 when they are in field goal range to tie it at 27, but get the touchdown late, much like on Christmas a couple of years ago, where the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go into Baltimore and get this W.
All right. Very good. So, Brian, just to double back, did you take the over or the under? I forget your final score.
It was under based. No, wait a
Okay.
second. He said 26-24. No, that's over still.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm
So
over.
you both have over. I say that when I looked at this game from a number standpoint, I've watched the Ravens play a lot, clearly watched every Steelers game. I think this is going to be a defensive game. I think this is going to be one of those old school Steelers games. Scoring is going to be at a premium. You are going to have a lot of hard hitting. I thought the Titans game was very hard hitting. It almost seemed personal, when you watch it. This is going to be a very similar. I think this is going to be a rock'em sock'em style game. But you know what? There's something about this Steelers team. I don't think they get fazed by things like playing in Baltimore and playing it on the road. It just doesn't faze them. Veteran team, been there, done that. They have a chip on their shoulder because this is the team that's won the AFC North the last 2 years. I like the Steelers in this game to win 23-17. 23-17. I'll take the Steelers getting points, and I'll take the under. If you want a more detailed version of my pick, check out my Let's Ride on Friday morning, in which case I give you all that information there. Okay, bold predictions really quick. Bold predictions. Oh, Ezra just put out a bold prediction. He said that Tucker misses a field goal. That would be a bold prediction, believe it or not. Brian, what's your bold prediction that has nothing to do with Bougie or Dave Schofield?
It's not me. It's the mask.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not me. It's the mask.
It's a co-editor in The Mask, yes. And that's it. I never mentioned Dave Schofield's name, but he's probably going to be up to some no good this weekend in Charm City.
Some shenanigans.
Yeah, shenanigans with Bucci. I should say that. You know what? I'm looking for the Steelers' leading receiver this weekend to be James Washington.
Ooh, I like it. I like that a lot. What's the stat line? How many touchdowns?
I'm going to say 1 touchdown, but he's going to lead the team with, let's say, I want to say about 96 yards.
Nice. I love that. Dave Schofield, what's your bold prediction?
Well, last week I went with the quadfecta. It was I just missed which team it was. It wasn't the Steelers. It was the Chiefs. They're the ones that had a rushing, a passing, a special teams, and a defense. This week, I'm going to say that there will be either a defensive or special teams touchdown in the game, and the team that has it will win the game.
So you're saying that one of the teams is going to have a defensive touchdown.
And whoever does, they're going to win the game. Unless they both have one and then they even out. Then it's a tie.
All right. I
Steelers
really want
haven't
to
had one yet this year, so that would be a good time for it.
I really want to say that Robert Spillane has another bone-jarring hit, but you just can't. That's not really it. He's an inside linebacker. That's part of the job. I'm going to go with Minkah Fitzpatrick makes a big play in this game. I think it's going to be another pick. I think he's due. I think Lamar Jackson is wild enough sometimes throwing the football. I don't want to say wild as in bad. He'll take risks sometimes. He will. I think Minkah is going to study. He's a smart player. I think he makes a play. I think Minkah. That's maybe not a bold prediction, but Minkah's been. A lot of people have been down on Minkah Fitzpatrick this season. So that's my bold prediction. All right, Dave. Trivia time.
All right, I'm ready. This is going to be pretty quick. It's going to be interesting. The Steelers are 6-0. They have only ever gone 6-0 one other time in their history which was in 1978, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. The Baltimore Ravens are 5-1. They've only ever been 5-1 other than this season 2 other times in their history. Any idea what years those were?
So they won Super Bowls both years. So you have to think back to those years, right? So
I didn't say that they won Super Bowls those years.
You said the Ravens.
I kind of set it up that way, if you know what I mean.
Well, Missy Matthews.
I think I got this.
Okay.
I think I got this.
Okay,
go ahead, Bryan.
I'm going to go with 2008 in Joe Flacco and John Harbaugh's rookie years. And I'm also going to go in the year 2000 when they won the Super Bowl.
Jeff, do you have anything? You want me just to answer it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. The 2008 is very interesting because that's the only time their best start ever was 4-0 in 2008, but then they lost the next 2 games. They did not start 5-1. They started 5-1 in 2000 when they won the Super Bowl, and they started 5-1 in 2012 when they won the Super Bowl. So these 2 teams are facing off against each other with starting records that the only other time they've had these starting records, they've both won the Super Bowl. So something's got to give. But here's something interesting that's going to give. Ravens have never started 6-1. Every time they started 5-1, they lost the next game.
But they have a good record coming off the bye and at home against the Steelers. Yeah. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah. All right. Did you just yada, yada, yada that? No, I'm just joking.
Yada, 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 the best part.
With that said, Bryan, what are your final thoughts for the show? Or do you have a trivia question? I forgot to ask.
I don't, since it's Dave's are so compelling. Mine is just like, who went to Vegas and punched a Cincinnati Bengals linebacker? It was Joey Porter, yes. But that's what I go for my trivia. So no, I just do have my final thoughts. And speaking of Vegas, I'm the guy that you want to take to Vegas, not to bet, but to have an awesome time. And you're going to have an awesome, memorable time. It's like our hangover show. It's either a good hangover or a really bad hangover, but you want to go to Vegas with me. But if you're going to go to put some money down, don't, because my gut is usually wrong. But I go with the gut. I'm the guy that's in the horror movie that's laying in bed there thinking, all right, the murders are over. We're fine. Next thing you know, the knife comes slashing through the tent and then I'm done. So that's what happens with my gut. So my predictions, don't put stock in my predictions. All I'm saying is sometimes my gut goes a little crazy and I worry about things that aren't going to happen. So that's what I'm thinking here.
All right, Dave, final thoughts.
I said this on my other shows this week. What I want more than anything this week is I want a good, crisp game all around. And I want to see these 2 teams at their best taking on each other and see who the better team is. I don't want this game factored by poor officiating. I don't want this game factored by a key injury to anyone on either team. And I don't want this game factored on crazy bounces and crazy crap that goes all in one team's favor and not the other, even if it was the Steelers' favor. I want the Steelers to win this game based on simply being the better team.
My final thoughts is that something I talked about on Let's Ride is that I feel like this rivalry is being renewed. And there were some years where it wasn't, I don't know, it just seemed kind of outdated. It seemed kind of fabricated. Guys were talking about respecting. What in the world is that? I mean, no, it's the Steelers and Ravens. Come on. You hate each other. That's fine. You're supposed to. It's your birthright, technically. When you got drafted or picked up by Pittsburgh, you're supposed to hate Baltimore. So I hope that they come out, and I hope that it's a game like Tennessee. I thought that was a very hard-hitting game, and it did seem personal for a lot of different players, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. Like Dave said, I hope there's not those extenuating circumstances with officiating or injuries that dictate the game. But ultimately, I hope that is back. I want to see this rivalry should just, it's boiling over. I'm waiting for it. I just hope it happens in a Steelers win on Sunday. So there you have it. Folks.
Key to the game. Play hard.
Oh, always a key to the game. So with that said, I am Jeff Hartman for Dave Schofield and Bryan Anthony Davis. Thank you for listening to the Steelers preview. We'll be back next week as we preview a Week 9 game in Dallas against the Cowboys. Hopefully the Steelers will be 7-0. Make sure you check us out in the post-game show after the game on Sunday, and we'll hash it all out. In the meantime, wherever you get your podcast, check us out. Follow us. BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Steelers. That's it. Here we go. Let's go Steelers. Dave, send us out.
Hey.
Oh, my gosh.